Hello, Mixtresses and Mixters. This is Mixtress Ray. You're watching Mixtress video. Ooh, bumping the table immediately. So there we go. So this is gonna be, holy shit. You can see how long this video is. I would not be surprised if it's over an hour. So, this is gonna be kind of a combination of things. Sorry for all the clutter on the table. As I talk about things, the clutter will be cleared. So you'll have that satisfaction to look forward to. I could actually put everything in the shot too. Everything that I'm going to talk about, we can just put in the shot. Anyway, this is going to be a combo of like my final installment of Tarot Throwback 2002. Then it's going to transition into summer favorites because I haven't done a favorites video since May. And even that was sort of it was more a relapse diary because I spent a lot of money in May. I was definitely emotionally regulating through shopping. And even though it's been suggested recently that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is when you don't have the money to do it. And in my case, yeah, I definitely went over my budget in that month. But I haven't done a favorites video since then. So this is going to be like an entire summer favorites since I haven't done one since then. So this will be for all of June, July, and August. And I'm not talking about everything that was my favorite thing. I'm just talking about like the top things. And then the favorites is going to transition into my new project for September. I don't know if I'm going to create like a hashtag for this one because, of course, you're welcome to play along. It's going to be a complicated thing to explain, so that's probably going to be the bulk of the video, but I will put that at the end since that will be the part of the video that will be interesting to the least amount of people. You know what I mean? So let's start with how the end of my Tarot Throwback 2002 went. First of all, here's an example of, this is the same company that makes my merch, Teespring. So if you put the mugs in the dishwasher, this will happen eventually. So just know that if you ever want to buy my merch, this one isn't my merch, but it's the same company. So I'm not one of those people that's gonna fucking hand wash shit. So whatever. It's distressed. It's punk. But just be aware. If you get a Mixtress radio mug and you put it in the dishwasher, that's going to happen eventually. Okay. So, my last week of Tarot Throwback 2002, I told you guys like last week sometime that I was going to spend my last week of the challenge doing, using only decks that I actually had in 2002 that I still have. So that was Thoth, Egyptian Tarot, and Brian Froud's Fairies Oracle. I basically failed that last week. I did use Thoth for about 3 days and I just got angry at it like I always do. Overall, I think that deck is not for me. But the first day or two I was like, okay, girl, what are we going to talk about? I see what you're doing here. And sorry, I don't have the visual. I just put it needed to be put back in, it's not in timeout because I put it on the actual tarot shelf, but it needs to be in its box right now. Cause I'm mad at it. That's a thing, like, I have very visceral emotional attachments to decks. And that is the reason that I have to declutter frequently, cull frequently, whatever you get rid of things frequently, rehome frequently, whatever you want to fucking call it. It's not just a matter of like I'm buying an object and I'm deciding whether or not I like the object. There's something more to tarot for me. And don't feel bad if you don't feel that way. Like, we all have our own experiences with things that are motivated by so many different factors, right? Okay, Sorry. So, my main takeaway, though, I still kept within decks that were available by 2002, but I found that Egyptian Tarot isn't actually usable as a deck for me. And I don't think that that's the deck in general. It's my copy of it. My copy of it is sentimental, and it also let me know this week that it didn't like my because I had like about 15 cards missing from that deck, and so within like a couple years ago I bought another copy of it so that I could mix in the cards that I was missing so that I could have a complete tarot deck. But it let me know this week that it doesn't like the cards from the other deck. So I took them out. So it is now an incomplete tarot deck. It's not one that I use anyway. I just keep it for sentimental reasons. So that's the assessment on that. It's not a usable deck, but I did tune into it enough to realize that I needed to take those new cards out. So I did. And then Thoth made me angry, so I put it away, and I just went back to using Tarot of the Cat People again, which is what I used like as an overall, so that transitions me into the overall assessment of this experiment, is that I deepened my bond with Tarot of the Cat People, and I bought this Traveler's Report. I was able to find it on Thrift Books for like $22. And I read the whole, like, all the introductory chapters. So yeah, I read this first, like, 46 pages, just getting more familiar with the world of Tarot of the Cat People. And I'm excited to explore this guidebook more over the years. For the most part, all of August, I was using Tarot of the Cat People. So that's definitely a favorite for August. And my other big takeaway, which I did mention in my last video, is that I really love Nefertari's tarot. I really love it. It kind of on the surface seems like a throwaway deck, but it's not for me, and I bonded with it, definitely. So I really did have a good experience with this experiment because it forced me to work with a limited collection. So for now, that I think I'm gonna, and I know a lot of people have had this idea before, they will like announce at the beginning of the month, these are the decks I'm going to work with this month. And so that way they're working with a more limited collection. And I think that's definitely going to be helpful for me. And I just hadn't ever really tried that before now. So that was a big takeaway from the month as well. Just working with a limited collection works for me. So I bonded, primarily the tarot decks that I bonded with in my Tarot Throwback 2002 were Nefertari's Tarot and Tarot of the Cat People. These are, like, I already knew that Tarot of the Cat People was a ride or die, but Nefertari also is now. And then the other biggest takeaway is Brian Froud's Fairies Oracle. So this Oracle deck was the first Oracle deck I ever owned. I got it, I don't know the exact year, but it probably would have been, definitely would have been while I was still in high school. I got this deck. And at the time, it was just like, ooh, fairies. And I bought it. And at the time, I didn't really like the art that much. I was creeped out by it. I didn't like any of the fairies that I didn't deem to be pretty. So any of the fairies that were older or chunkier or any of that, any of the like gnomey looking guys I didn't like. I still have yet to, I need to draw my own fairy guide. That's a goal for someday. But anyway, especially the last week of this challenge, I started doing daily draws at the end of the night with Fairy Oracle, and this shit is accurate for me. Like, sometimes the guidebook is like insanely specific to what I'm going through, and it's just these fairies. I think I view fairy energy in a similar way to that most people view angel energy, and I know that might sound weird to a lot of people, but I see them as sort of these mischievous angels that have my back, kind of, in a way. Especially, this fairy godmother. This is one of my favorite cards to get because it's just so nurturing and beautiful. And there's a lot of snark in this deck. Look, it's a naked child, but I don't hate it. This is like the only naked child in a deck that makes me happy, makes me think about, the good aspects of childhood. I have tears in my eyes right now looking at this deck because the thing about this is, like, I bought this deck back before I even knew the difference between tarot and oracle. I bought this deck before I was ready for it. And this is not that copy, unfortunately. But whenever I started doing, like, the daily draws every night about a week ago, and I've done that before with Fairy Oracle. I already knew I loved it, but I definitely, it became just indispensable to me this month. I am going to continue my daily draws with this deck, most likely, even throughout September, because it's great. It's amazing. I love it. And I'm going to keep it on this table because it's not going away like the other things are. Okay. So that's my Tarot Throwback 2002 main takeaways is Fairies Oracle, Ride or Die, Nefertari's Ride or Die, Tarot of the Cat People. Already knew it, but I bonded even more with it this month. And the other thing that really struck me is that I have so much in the way of these spiritual tools. I mean, sometimes it's overwhelming. I have gotten to a point where, again, I feel like it's more than I can handle, and I'm going to be letting go of some stuff, and I already have let go of a few things this month. The only thing that was part of my Tarot Throwback 2002 challenge that I got rid of was Londa Tarot. Just because it just is not a very substantive tarot deck, in my opinion. I just couldn't bond to it. And I even had a copy that belonged to beloved friends of mine. And I thought, okay, this is the one because it has passed through the hands of people I love. But it still didn't work for me. So I was like, okay. So that one was the only thing that really had to go from that experiment. But, okay, so that's Tarot Throwback 2002. Now let's transition into my favorites of the summer. So, I have bought, actually, let's find the number. I've been keeping track of all my purchases this year. Okay, over the course of the summer, I have bought 2, 5, 6, 7... I bought 12 perfumes. 12 bottles of perfume from Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab over the summer. I've pretty much my entire online shopping budget for myself I have spent on perfume this summer. And I haven't felt... I'm going to transition into talking about guilt. Guilt and shame is going to be the big chunk of this video. But I'll tell you, I don't feel any guilt or shame about buying things from Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. It is a safe place for me to purchase within my budget, and a lot of the times the perfumes that I buy from them are, directly contributing to causes I believe in. They are also just like, I just like them so much. It feels like I'm giving money to friends for these beautiful little perfume gifts. And even though I can't smell them before I purchase them and I can't return them if I don't like them, I can just give them away to friends. So I've given so many perfumes away to my friends that I'm sure at this point, whenever they hear that I'm getting something, they're like, ooh, what am I going to be offered in another month, Because if something doesn't work for me, I usually know who it will work for, and I'm just the little perfume fairy. And I'm fine with that. So, the main favorites for me for the summer were perfumes. So this is called, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring it up close because the light is down here, but hopefully you can read it. Pumpkin Snake Latte. So this is my little perfume journal. I'm going to read for you the descriptions of each one, just for funsies. And yes, I have a table of contents in my perfume diary. Pumpkin Snake Latte. Snake oil, pumpkin, coffee, and a creamy note. So this one didn't actually have a description, but snake oil, let's just read the description for snake oil, because it's a common fragrance for them. This one actually you can't get right now. Sorry guys. But you can get snake oil. So I'll read the description for snake oil. Here we go. Deep, rich, earthy notes swirled with vegetal musks, sugared vanilla bean, and dark spices. So it smells like, snake oil itself smells like, sugary patchouli musk. And it's delightful. I fucking love it. And the pumpkin snake latte is basically just adding a pumpkin spice latte to the snake oil blend. And I already knew that I really liked this one. This is one that was part of their Halloween collection last year, and I bought it back then. But this summer, one day, I had just gotten home from the pool, and I was getting ready to go out and pick up some burgers for dinner. And I was putting on perfume after changing out of my suit. And I put this one on. I got this one out, and I was just like, I was kind of sun drunk. And I dropped it, and I spilled the entire bottle. And it wasn't available anymore because it's a Halloween scent. So they only have it available till I don't know, March the following year or something, and they take it down. So it wasn't available anymore. And I emailed them, and I was just like, I spilled my bottle of pumpkin snake latte, oh my god. And they let me buy some bottles. I bought 2 because when I spilled it, it made me realize how much I love it, because my entire bedroom smelled like it because I spilled it onto my dresser. And my entire bedroom smelled like it for 5 days. And normally, in a situation like that, you would get tired of something when you smell it constantly, right? But I didn't. I decided I loved it even more. So I typically have a rule against buying backup bottles of perfume because I have a perfume problem. But in this case, I decided, basically if it's one of my top 5 perfumes of all time, I'm allowed to have one backup. So I bought 2 bottles, one to replace the one that I spilled, and then one as a backup. So I'm going to smell it right now just for funsies. I do love it so much. This is one of my top 4 of all time. So that's a favorite of the summer. And then, which one should I talk about next? We'll talk about the other one that you can't get right now, and then the other 2 you can get, just in case you fall in love with it while I'm talking about it. So this one's called Margaret Magdalena Muffin Head. It's got a cute little picture of a chocolate lab, and this was directly to help with the vet bills from an unexpected situation that happened with their dog, and it's just named after their dog. So the description of this one, again, I'm sorry, it's sold out. They might re-release it, I don't know. But it's smoky fudge brownie, coffee beans, caramelized amber, and green cardamom. So I have realized that I've known for a while that I like amber, but recently I've realized I like chocolate notes. I love cardamom and coffee notes. This one, oh my god, it really smells like a fudge brownie with on the side of a caramel coffee drink. And it's one of those brownies that's like real gooey in the middle, but it's like slightly burned on the edges. It smells so good. And I wear it, I've been wearing it like at night. I put it on like at night once I put my pajamas on and I'm just sitting around watching YouTube videos and playing with tarot cards. And it's great, but it's pretty strong brownie smell. So like, but it's more sophisticated than just smelling like a brownie, you know? So I'm loving this one. And then, okay, so these last two you can get if you like the sound of them. So this one I've been wearing almost daily since I got it. I guess it's only been since the end of July. I've only had it like a month. But it's called Dark-Eyed Delightful. And this is a perfume that the funds for it go to an abortion funding organization. I'm not sure what it's called. But it is brown sugar, cacao, toasted cardamom, noticing a theme, patchouli, vanilla absolute, and benzoin. So this one is also a very chocolatey sugar, vanilla. It's good. It's really good. This one's become one of my top 5. And I'm wearing it almost daily right now. Usually I start the day with wearing this chocolatey thing, and then I put this chocolatey thing on at night. This more chocolatey thing on at night. It's real fucking good. That's all I can say about that. Death Adder. So this is the last one, and this is one you can still get too. This one's another snake oil blend. I'm addicted to snake oil blends. This one is snake oil mixed with vetiver and coconut, black coconut, vanilla, and a Papanax. So it's a very summery fragrance probably just because of that coconut. So this is one that I've been wearing on like really hot days. It feels appropriate when I just want like one of my snake oil blends with some coconut. Okay, I've got sweat dripping down me, so I'm going to turn my fan on. Little white noise in the background for you guys. The favorites are essentially Brian Froud's Fairies Oracle, Tarot of the Cat People, and those perfumes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are other things. Oh yeah, okay, I remember a favorite. Okay, sorry. Forgive me, I'm going to leave the room to get something. I don't know how I'm gonna get him in the shot, but we're gonna try. This is Siegfried. What's he gonna look like if I just set him down right here? Trying to find the right angle so that you can kind of see him, but it's an aerial shot. It is a shame that I did not have a statue of a crow before now, but I didn't. And this one was just, you know, something you can get at Michael's for 20 bucks. Michael bought it for me. My Michael bought it for me from Michael's, and I named him Siegfried because I used to have a, like, you know, a little stuffed, not real stuffed, but a little stuffed, you know, Halloween decoration crow that I posed with in the photo shoot that my mom took of me to send to the Maury Povich show. And I got on the show, and they insisted that I bring the crow with me, and I had named him Siegfried. And, they insisted that I have it as a prop, that I was holding it in my hands during the taping of the show. And I did, although it felt kind of cheesy because it was forced, you know. But I did enjoy having it in my hands. It was comforting. And I probably lost that crow in the tornado. Had to have been, because I wouldn't have let it go, even though it was just a cheesy little, like, hollow, made out of paper mache with some feathers glued to it thing. And so I decided to name him Siegfried in honor of that Siegfried. And he just, he has an honored place in my house. And I just, pet him on the head every once in a while. Eventually I'll probably have to repaint his head because I'll probably like rub the paint off in time, because I mean it's still kind of a cheap little thing, but it was a very early birthday gift from Michael. Siegfried. Okay, set him down carefully. I do not want to accidentally kick him later. So that's the last of the favorites. Okay, so now we get into sort of the meatier topic. This is something that is going to be difficult for me to discuss, I think. So it started with the 3 Girls, 1 Controversial Topic video put out by Julie, Heather, and Sarah from Sunset Bow Tarot. It came out like 36 hours ago as of me taping this. So not long ago. Maybe not even 36 hours. Anyway, doesn't matter. Don't get caught up in that detail. Do not count the hours. Okay. I really liked, so they were talking about like colors versus collectors and that whole thing. And I thought that the perspective that they brought was really interesting. Ultimately, emotionally, viscerally, I do not come from the perspective of particularly Sarah. So Sarah's perspective is, she had a really interesting point, which was, it seems like people tend to place morality judgments upon their tarot deck collection. And I started thinking about it like, oh yeah, I absolutely do. I absolutely do. In fact, I view my relationship to almost every single object in my life. I realized that I either feel guilt over having it for one reason or another, or I feel pride over having it for one reason or the other. And it's usually based on a story. Like I am, for example, this journal right here. I am proud of my possession of this journal because my mom, I think it's pretty, and my mom had it for probably 20 years. It's a nice journal, and she had it for maybe 20 years, and she was getting rid of a bunch of old journals because she had like a whole drawer full of unused journals, and I took it, and I bought this Abigail Larson sticker to put on it, and I started using it this year. I feel proud of this item because it was something that I rescued from not being used. Ridiculous as that sounds, that's the way my brain works, and I can't stop it from working that way. And a lot of the tarot decks that I have, if they come with a story, like someone gave it to me, or I got it for ridiculously cheap, or I talked the artist into giving it to me for free, or whatever. If it has like a cool story, I feel proud of it. So I started thinking like, why do I have this? And it's something that, I've been journaling a lot about. Why do I feel this way? Why do I react to objects this way? Is it something that I need to work on, or is it something that I need to go with? Overall, I think I need to go with it. I think this is just how I experience the world, and even though there might be some psychological traumas along the way that made me this way, it doesn't change that I am this way. And that's okay. I have a very animistic relationship to the objects in my life, and if I curate my objects, it's like every time I look at something that I own, the story of how I got it plays again in my head. Almost every single thing. I mean, like, it's dramatic to say every single thing, but almost every single thing. And that's overwhelming, and part of that overwhelm is that if I don't like the story of how I got it, or I don't like all of the feelings that come up when I look at it, then I have to let it go, because I don't want the objects in my life to be telling me stories that I don't want to hear, you know? And crazy as that sounds, that's the way that my brain works. So I'm going to share with you some of my process and the challenge that I'm making for myself for September. So I started, thanks to Sarah at Sunset Bow Tarot, who was talking about how we tend to attach morality to our objects. So I started thinking about how I feel guilt surrounding like any tarot deck in my life. If, like, for example, okay, let's start with, sorry, I'm terrible at like structuring things. Okay, I'm gonna shut the door to my closet really quick. Okay. So now we can have a more private discussion. Anyway, so here's what I decided to do. Now, I'm a person that I go through all of my tarot and oracle decks and I put them through the paces in different ways all the time. Sorsha and I have that in common, pacing the tarot. I do that. And almost every time I've created like a system to, or some kind of rating system or way to pit my decks up against, because at the end of an experiment like that, I feel like I know my decks better as far as like which ones I want to keep and which ones I don't, blah, blah, blah. Almost every time I've created a system like that, it hasn't really worked. But this time it did. And it was all started by the discussion surrounding attaching morality to our objects. Because in my experience, I can't separate. I can't separate that. I can't separate the stories of why I have the things that I have. And I want to work on it to a certain extent so that that shit doesn't distract me all the time. I do want to work on that, but for the most part, I'm going to work within it for myself personally. And I find it fascinating people that do not have that sort of emotional, like visceral, like, you know, bond with items, because it must be so much easier to take in and let go of things in your life. Because, yeah, anyway, I think it's cool that people can do that and that people are smart enough to be able to verbalize it. And I found that discussion really fascinating. And, of course, I love them so much, and I'm so glad that they decided to have sort of a conversation about it. I mean, I feel like we kind of collectively as a tarot society are having conversations about this whole thing, but that was an actual way for you to see 3 different perspectives in one video, and that was really cool. Okay, so here's what I did. I went through yesterday in my journal. I listed every single cartomancy deck that I have in my collection, with the exception of my one playing card deck, but I don't usually use it for cartomancy purposes. So, but I listed everything else. And I asked myself 2 questions. 1, do I feel guilt and shame surrounding my possession of this deck? And if yes, why? And after that why, sort of further digging into, is this guilt that is a good motivator for me letting this thing go? Or is this guilt that I can counteract by taking some sort of action against it? And that aspect of the question was kind of inspired by Sorsha's Pacing the Tarot challenge. Like, can I do something to rectify my guilt and shame that I have surrounding my possession of this object? So, like, for example, in the sense of, like, do I feel guilt and shame about having this Crow Tarot? Yes. Why? Because I haven't used it much yet. So that was a very frequent answer to why, if I do feel guilt surrounding an object, is that I haven't used it that much yet. or that I've been recently neglecting it, or I've had it for years and I just have not dug into it at all. That's a common reason for me feeling guilt at having. Because I've always been like, every single item in my life, if it's not getting a lot of love and use, I want it to go. And yeah, that's me. That's me. Okay. So, do I feel guilt and shame in association with this object? If yes, why? Is this something I can fix or not? Second question is, do I feel like it's one of a kind in my collection? Because I've found that that is an important aspect for me. It needs to be something that is unlike anything else I have. And that's kind of a broad thing, because it could either aesthetically be something that doesn't exist elsewhere in my collection, or something as simple as an aesthetic reason, or it can be something such as like my Trionfi della Luna. It's the only Marseille deck I have. Or it can be like an Oracle deck that has sort of a weird system, or a weird, like, Amenti is like this, because it's the 42 principles of Ma'at. I don't have any other Oracle deck like this. This is actually, speaking of morality, this is like an ethical, like I go to this deck for ethical questions. And I don't go to any other deck. Well, I mean, ethics come into everything, right? But this deck has a specific reason that I go to it, you know? So in the answer, okay, so like, for example, when I was assessing Amenti Oracle, do I feel guilt about this deck? Currently, yes, because I haven't been using it much at all in the last year or so. Do I think it's one of a kind in my collection? Also, yes. So basically, I went through and, okay, this is what I think I'm not going to actually show it, but essentially, like, there are 3 different categories, right? So there are the categories of decks that I answered, yes, I feel guilty, and yes, I think it's one of a kind. There's the category of, yes, I feel guilty about it, and no, I don't think it's one of a kind. And then there's the category of, no, I don't feel guilty about it, and yes, I think it's one of a kind. So in that case, no, I don't feel guilty about having it, and yes, I feel like it's one of a kind in my collection. Those, an example being Marigold Tarot, just plopped it off the wall real quick. Those are ones that are like my ride or dies. You know, I use it as much as I feel comfortable using a deck in my collection. I use it for a specific purpose in some cases. It's definitely different from everything else that I have. It has a specific voice, blah, 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 blah. So, it's all good in that case. There's no problems with those decks. But the other 2 categories, there's a problem there, right? If I feel guilt about a deck, but I think it's one of a kind in my collection, then there might be work to do before I let it go. But in the cases of decks where I do feel guilty for having it, and I don't think it's one of a kind, those are on the chopping block. And there were actually only 4 of those in my collection. That, yes, I feel guilty for having it, probably because I don't use it, and I don't think it's one of a kind in my collection. 2 of them, there were 4 decks in that category. 2 of them, one of them's in purgatory, one of them I've already let go of since yesterday when I did this whole journaling thing. So, okay, I wanted to go over the reasons that I feel guilt associated with decks. So, and I have a little tally sheet, a tally thing too. So one of the top reason is because I don't use it enough. So I have 13 decks that I feel guilty about having because I haven't used them enough to know if I want to keep them, you know? 6 were for other emotional reasons. Just like various stuff that I won't go into because they're personal. There's some personal reasons that I feel guilt about having particular items. An example of that would be I don't have any like this in my collection right now because I tend to get rid of those immediately. But if I have an out of print deck that I don't actually use enough or I haven't created a good bond with yet, I tend to get rid of those very quickly, because if it's out of print, in my mind, I am keeping it from somebody else that might love it more than me. And that brings me the most guilt out of anything else. And I realize that, like, this might sound ridiculous to a lot of people, and I'm not saying that anyone else should feel the way that I feel, I'm just letting you know how I feel. That's the disclaimer that should be on all my videos, because I do speak in a lot of absolutes. And I can see how people might get defensive because of the way that I word things, but language is difficult for me. Some days it's more difficult than others, and this is something also that Sorsha has talked about on her channel. Sorsha's soaring thoughts. I don't know. I just discovered her channel. Hi Sorsha, if you're watching, you are so cool. I want to hear everything about your archiving librarian life. Anyway, so that's one of the emotional reasons that I might feel guilt surrounding a tarot deck or oracle deck. I have one deck in my collection that I feel guilty about having because I spent way too much goddamn money on it. So that's a thing. That's another reason that I get rid of decks pretty frequently. It's why there's only one in my collection that still exists that I have money guilt over. Because I am, spend whatever you want on tarot decks if it's within your budget and you're happy doing so. But almost any deck that costs more than $30 is going to be a budgeting issue for me. I'm going to have to take some time to really think about it, I don't have any absolute limit. In general, I don't like to spend more than $30 on a deck, but sometimes there are exceptions. Like, I just did the pre-order. That's another thing. Like, pre-orders are usually an absolute no for me. But I just did the pre-order for the second edition of Desert Illuminations because that's a deck that I've had for almost 2 years now, and I really, really like it. And every change that's been made for the second edition is an improvement that I can get behind, and so I'm doing it. In that case, I'm spending more than $30 on a tarot deck, and it's a pre-order. So these are both possible deal breakers for me, but in this case, there's an exception being made. So nothing is an absolute. But yeah, anyway. So guilt reasons, don't use enough because it was too expensive. Other emotional reasons. Sometimes I feel guilty. I always feel guilty when I have multiple copies of a deck. I'm not a person that can handle having a backup. It really hurts my brain. I don't know why, but that's just how I feel. Having a backup or having multiple things in my life that serve the same purpose really, really bugs me. And it's dumb. It sounds dumb, but I can't help it. It's how I feel. So, those are all, and the other reason that I might have guilt surrounding a tarot deck, guilt maybe isn't the right word all the time. I hope that you guys can kind of see through the lines of the word that I'm saying and the actual thing that I mean. But guilt is not exactly the right word, but there are several cases where I feel bad about having an item because, essentially it's because of the story of how I acquired that item and the story of my experiences with that item since acquiring it. All of those stories replay in my head every time I look at every object in my life. So if part of that story includes me feeling really salty over how the Kickstarter went, if it's a Kickstarter deck, me not liking the artist's ethics in general, the way that they sell their items, the way that they make their items seem really fucking precious. I may or may not be talking to you. This dude. And he very well sounds like a nice person, but the way that he every single edition of his different shit is so limited and precious and a bit overpriced. And, yeah. So artist ethics was also one of the top reasons that I felt a certain type of way about the decks in my life. Okay, so all of this is to lead up to my September challenge to myself. I am going to be working with a truncated collection again, like I did before, like I did in August. And I'm going to be working with decks that I answered yes to feeling guilty, and the reason was, and no, and yes to it being one of a kind in my collection. So these are the redeemable decks in my mind, because I do feel like, because I don't like having more than one deck that serves the same purpose. So it being one of a kind is important to me. But if I feel guilt because I don't use a deck enough, those are the decks that I want to use more in September 2022. So that leads us into, is that everything I wanted to say about that? For now, yes. I have a lot to say about all this shit, but yeah, okay. This is just a thing that I'm going to be dealing with until I wrap my head around it. This is how I am. I talk a lot about issues that I'm currently dealing with until I'm able to completely wrap my head around them, Okay, I'm going to take a little break, refill my drink here, and then I will actually go through these decks that I'm going to be working with in September. Okay, I have switched to the LaCroix portion of the day. Transition from coffee to LaCroix. Maybe I'll sweat less. Okay, so these are, I'm not really like, even though I'm going to be working with a truncated collection, I'm not really limiting myself to just these decks, because there are plenty of decks in my collection that I neglect and I don't use very often. But some of those decks I don't feel guilty about not using them very often, so they're not in this category. These are all decks that I do feel guilty about not using more. So, Oracle decks, I will be working with a Minty Oracle, perhaps. I don't know, my relationship to Oracle decks is weird. It's like, I feel like, the number of Oracle decks that I can wrap my head around is only like 10 or 15. And I have more than that right now. So, any one of these could potentially, no, not true. These two are not going to be on the chopping block, no matter what. Because this one I really bonded to at one time. This is one that I feel like I have just currently been neglecting, and I would like to play with it again. So, the Minty Oracle. This is the notorious JBG by Julie. And at the end of the day, even though I have 3 decks with Jasmine Beckett Griffith's art, I don't love working with her art in a tarot way. I like it in an oracle way, but in a tarot way it doesn't quite work for me. This is the closest that any JBG tarot deck could be to working for me, but I still have not worked with it a whole lot. Even though I got to be sort of part of the process of helping pick out some of the images. This is a case where, like, the story that is told about this deck in my head whenever I look at it is beautiful. It's a beautiful story. It's, I kind of got to help pick out the images with Julie back in like January. We were both like sick. She had like some kind of viral something and I had COVID. She let me pick Kali for the Tower card. We played with it together. We bonded over it. And so the story that is told when I flip through this deck is beautiful. It reminds me of my friendship with Julie, which I've gotten really close to her this year, and I love her so much. She's one of my favorite people in the world. And so this is not a deck that's ever going to leave my collection. Even if I never use it as a tarot deck, I'm still going to keep it. It's going to go... I have a sentimental deck category that is like decks that I don't necessarily need to use, but I would like to at least use this deck long enough to know, can I really work with it as a tarot deck? Through no fault of Julie's, like, obviously she knows how to make a tarot deck, for sure. But I think for me, Jasmine Beckett Griffith's art, because it wasn't created specifically for the images of tarot or the archetypes of tarot, it's hard for me to work with a deck like that for very long. So, yeah, this is one I'm going to be exploring more this month. Oh, this is... Sorry, this wasn't... I was going to do the oracles first, but this is another oracle deck. This is Fallen Angels Oracle. I love this, like, cheesy-ass digital collage in a cemetery vibe. Love these colors. I added the, like, each card has, like, a planetary symbol, or planetary association, and elemental association. So I added those to each card. I just haven't really worked with it. And it was a gift. So the story that is told is it's a gift, but I do feel guilty that I haven't really wrapped my head around it yet. I've had it for a few months now. So I would like to... I suspect that this is not a very... It's not a very deep oracle deck, unless I create my own way of working with it, create my own depth. So, do I want to do that? Do I care enough to do that? Maybe, because the imagery makes me laugh. There's a lot of, like, animal heads on human bodies, which I'm into. It's kind of... It's a so bad it's good kind of thing for me. As far as when I look at the art, I'm very delighted by it, but that's as far as my connection to it has gone so far, so I'd like to work with it more. This one also was a gift that I've had for a few months. The other day I did like a quick Celtic crossbred with this. I wasn't trying to use it. So technically I cheated on my 2002 challenge the other day, because I did use this. I wasn't trying to use it. I was just trying to like flip through it, see if I care about it, because I haven't really used it that much, or really at all. But I did a Celtic crossbred with it, and it was really profound. Overall, this art style is not for me, but it's a very usable deck, actually. So I would like to spend more time with it this month. I mean, these are all the same story, right? They're just decks that I feel guilt for having them because I'm not using them enough. Because I do, the way that I define, I have tried to sort of view tarot and oracle decks the way that I view books. And I know a lot of people, that's kind of how they experience tarot and oracle decks. They see them as books. They can be on the shelf and not be used that often, and that's fine. But for me, tarot decks feel different. To me, they feel like I need to be using them. And I need to be, I need to have a relationship. And I've said this all before, but that's just how I feel. I need to feel like I have a relationship with my decks. And if I don't know the terms of that relationship, I'm anxious. So that's kind of how I feel about these decks. I don't know the terms of our relationship because I don't know them well enough. This is another one. I got this one in May when I had acquired a bunch of decks at once. And I think it's so charming. I definitely don't have anything else like this in my collection. I think it's so delightfully weird. I love all the eyeballs. There can never be too many eyeballs. I love all the boobs on the trees. You know, it's if I were doing the weird corner of my psyche challenge, this might be it. I do really, really like the vibe that this deck is bringing. And I feel like there could be an incredible bond. I could have an incredible bond with this deck. But I haven't made it yet. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to come true. For now, it's just, I feel like we could be good friends, but we haven't gotten to know each other yet. Oh, and I added a little googly eye to the side. Okay, this one. This one I've had for over a year now. It's my only Marseille, so that is the reason that I'm keeping it. Plus, I love the purple. And I actually, I really like the pips. But I don't love the other cards. Sorry, Anna. I know, this is I feel bad for having a negative reaction to someone's favorite deck. I love you, Anna, if you're watching. But overall, Patrick Willems' art style is not really for me, but I love the color scheme in this deck. I like the card stock. It's very easy to work with. And I really like the pips. Because, I mean, there's so much space, whenever you're overstimulated, you can enjoy the space. I like the weirdness of the art style, but sometimes the characters creep me out. This one doesn't. I really like her. This one does. This one creeps me out. Because it's just there's a slithering happening here, and I don't want to feel that in association with the lovers. I really don't. I'm okay with this Empress though. She's pretty cool. She's pretty cool. Anyway, so this is one that I don't think it's on the chopping block just because it's my only Marseille, and that's going to be enough of a reason for me to keep it. But yeah, I would like to actually work with it some more. And I haven't done any kind of study on is there sort of, I feel like I've gotten the vibe that there's sort of a different way that you could read Marseille. As far as just a system, a numerological system. Of course I can read it however the fuck I want, but I would like to explore Marseille in general a little bit more, and maybe that could help me deepen my connection to this deck. We'll see. This one I feel a lot of guilt about, because truthfully it's been in and out of purgatory for 2 years now. I got it in 2019. My mom bought it for me. I used it a lot in 2019, barely any in 2020, and maybe not at all in 2021 and 2022. So essentially I feel guilty for having it because I'm not using it, but the story associated with it is good because my mom bought it for me, and it was specifically as a thank you gift for something. And this is the only tarot deck that my mom has bought me. And I like the art style, but overall my assessment is that Charlie Quintero, at least at the time of creating this deck, either she just didn't spend enough time on it, in my opinion, or she just didn't know tarot that well at the time. I feel like it's close to, it's on the verge of being a deck that would have been very good. I feel like it's really close to being great. But if she had spent, because at this point she has a moon power, a sun power, no, star power, moon power, star power, and a Mars power. She's probably working on she's probably going to do every single planet. But if she had spent the time that she has spent working on all of those decks, concentrating on just one, I would love to have that deck. But see, and this is like all of the thoughts that I have about every single item in my life, all of them play every time I'm encountering that object. And, if you don't have that problem, just be grateful that you don't. Because it's, it's a constant, the scrolly thing at the bottom of the screen on like a news channel. It's a constant like ticker, whatever you call that thing. It's just constantly there. And I can't shut it down. The only thing that makes it shut down is if that story that is playing is not one I enjoy and I get rid of it, it's silenced. So, that's just my experience. And if you are out there having a similar experience, I feel you. Okay, I think that's it. I think I can finally shut the fuck up. Hey, I kept it in just like barely over an hour, I think. Once I edit these two files together, I think it'll be a couple minutes over an hour. So, yay for that. Anyway, so all of this is just to say I really enjoyed my Tarot Throwback 2002. I'm going to be... Oh, I forgot one. This one is one I already got out, so that's why I didn't think about it. I've been neglecting Darkwood this year. I would have called it one of my top 5 decks before this year began, but after this year, not using it hardly at all, I don't know. So I'm kind of like, I feel like I've been neglecting Darkwood, so I'm going to spend some time with it. And that's the deck I started with for my September challenge, even though it's technically still August. But yeah, that's the other one that, it's not going to be on the chopping block or anything, but I would like to rebond with it because we've had some good times, but just not lately. So that's another thing. Okay, apparently I'm not done. That's another thing that I've really been thinking about is sort of the concept, and I think I've mentioned this in other videos, but the concept of like Swedish death cleaning being that, the objects in your life, someone's going to have to deal with them after you die. So being respectful of that person, being respectful of just in general, the fact that all of the objects in your life, for me personally, like again, I'm really not trying to be prescriptive to anyone else, but the way that I speak, which was a point that Heather brought up that I thought was really smart in the 3 Girls, 1 Controversial Topic. She brought up that, she also tends to speak in absolutes. And if someone takes that as being, this is what I'm telling other people to do, I can see how they can get defensive. Like, I can see how people get defensive at the things that I say on my channel. But at the same time, I don't always have the energy to say all the disclaimers. But I just want you to know, I never, ever, ever want... I know that my experience is extremely different than other people's. There's a reason that the word for autistic people and other people like us that have different brains is neurodivergent. The way that our brains work is divergent from the way that typical brains work. So probably most people aren't going to understand me. And I've spent my whole life having people not understand me, and it's a triggering thing for me. But this space is also a space where whenever I speak my true thoughts and the way that when I try to verbalize the way that my brain works, people sometimes see themselves in me. And that's so incredible. That's so wonderful. And I love, that's one great reward of putting yourself out there, is that no matter how weird your thoughts are, someone's going to relate. And even people that don't relate, if they listen and they find you and they try to find if they listen and they try to understand you, even if they ultimately don't empathize, they don't actually feel what you feel, then that's incredible too. And that is definitely the vibe that I got from the 3 Girls, One Controversial Topic, is that these are 3 intelligent, empathetic human beings. And I love it. I love it. I love any conversation surrounding this topic as long as people are being respectful, right? And I know sometimes I may not seem to be in the respectful category because I get heated. I get heated because I do feel that there's definitely some, how do I word it? There's definitely some discomfort. I have a lot of discomfort surrounding the items that I have in my life. And I do attach really weighty emotions to every item in my life. And if I'm not having the right weighty emotions about an object, it's got to go. If the weight is making me feel bad, it's got to go. And sometimes that means I get rid of things that I later reacquire. Sometimes that means I get rid of things impulsively, and then a week later I realize, oh my God, a friend of mine wanted that deck. I could have given it to them. But instead I took it to the little library down the street because I couldn't fucking stand looking at it for another second. So I made an impulsive decision. I will always make impulsive decisions when it comes to acquisition of items and deletion of items from my life. And either I can feel bad about my process, or I can learn to accept it. And also, I can work on it. You know, I don't have to just accept that I am the way that I am if my behaviors are causing me distress. And I'm in a process. I'm sharing the process with you. And even just like recently I went back and listened to my May favorites video, and I've come a long way just since May. You know, I'm not, for the most part, I'm not acquiring many tarot and oracle decks. In fact, it's slowed down more than it ever has since the beginning of 2019 when I started kind of collecting the cartomancy decks. It's slowed down more than it ever has. And that has been good for me. Most of the time whenever I receive a tarot or oracle deck at this point, it's like a hand-me-down from a friend, or it's something that's very, very special, you know? And so that means that I am, you know, my issues with addiction surrounding this tarot thing is my issues with addiction. Like, I'm working on it. I'm getting through it. Anyway, what was my point? I feel like I started a point and then I got sidetracked 14 times and I don't even know what the original point was. But please know that I always want to hear other people's experiences, even when they're nothing like mine. Okay, what I was starting to say before, I think, was if you don't understand at all where I'm coming from, because you're a person that's just like, oh, I like this thing, I keep it. I don't like this thing, I get rid of it. Why does it have to be more complicated than that? I can see how it might be frustrating to listen to someone like me talk when it's not more complicated than that for you. Just feel lucky. Just feel lucky if it's not that complicated for you. Because it's a lot. It's a lot to every time I hold an item in my hand, there's a story, you know? But it makes my connection to the items that I have, that I love, very, what's the word I'm searching for? Profound and meaningful and spiritual. But it makes the things that aren't that feel bad, feel untrustworthy, which is a weird thing to attach to objects, right? But I feel it. It's something I feel. And I don't know how to stop that because it's the way that I've always been. Always. You know, every single thing, like every single item of clothing, every single item of jewelry, I can tell you exactly the story of how I got it and how I feel about it. You know, it's a lot. And I feel like the older I get, you know, the more things I'm going to acquire, the more room in my brain real estate needs to be dedicated to these stories about the objects that I have. And I'm sweating profusely, and it's not just because it's hot, but also because this is like a weird personal thing, you know, like I'm saying some real personal shit right here, and someone could be an asshole in the comments. They could, and maybe they will. But for the most part, people are very kind, even if they don't understand. So I know that you, likely, that are listening, watching right now, are one of those kind people. And I appreciate you a lot, and that's a good place to end this. Thank you so much for witnessing my process and trying to understand me. Because a lot of my life I've felt misunderstood. And it is really beautiful and validating to have a space where other people will relate to me or just feel warm feelings towards me even if they don't understand. It's really valuable. So thank you for listening.